Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Here in this audio, we wanted to cover a common statement regarding the government of Saudi Arabia, that they imprison the real scholars, and that those scholars that we quote from, the likes of Sheikh Salih Al-Awdah, those who are free to speak, they are the scholars for dollars, and they are ulama as-sulta, they're scholars for the governments and agents, so on and so forth, of certain wordings that we hear. And that the real scholars are the likes of Salman Al-Awdah and AbdulAziz At-Turayfi and Safar Hawali, Khalid Rashid and Alwan, and others who they refer to as being the real reformers that are behind bars. So we wanted to look at this statement and evaluate it from an academic point of view, look at allegations made in court for some of these speakers that have been arrested, and see if it is, as they mention, not fair charges. Inshallah, we're going to look at these charges and look at some of the beginning of the timeline of why these people were arrested and the reasons behind that, inshallah. And we're not doing so to free the Saudi government from error or to, and this is just a fair study. We're going to look into the matter, inshallah. So the first person of the speakers that we want to start with, inshallah, it is Salman Al-Awdah, who they quote the most in terms of being imprisoned oppressively and wrongfully on unjust allegations and accusations. So let's first hear his son, Abdullah, because we want to see, we found out that he was arrested on a number of occasions, and just see the reasons, the charges, and why he was released, and then again afterwards arrested again. What are the reasons behind that, inshallah? Because altogether, currently, he has 37 charges laid against him. These are a number of charges. And also Safar Hawali, approximately, I believe, 27 charges laid against him. And Muhammad Salih Al-Munajjid, he has 8 charges laid against him. So we want to study these charges and see on what premise were these charges laid against him. Are they fair charges, inshallah? Here's the statement of Salman Al-Awdah's son, explaining the first incident of his arrest in the early 90s, inshallah. Also, some of these clips, as a disclaimer, have some music in the background. We were finding it difficult to remove. But we're just going to quickly share, just so we can highlight what's being mentioned in this interview, inshallah.
I remember vividly in 1994, I was the youngest protester on the street of Buraida when he was arrested. What was different about that time,
So he's speaking about his father. He was on the streets of Buraida, that's where he's from, as a young protester. And if you can, there's some of his old khutbahs, those fiery khutbahs, where he's inciting and speaking about things that relate to certain decisions of the Saudi government, of politics, on the Friday ceremony. And also now he's mentioning in the streets that he was protesting. And just bearing in mind, protesting is illegal in Saudi. And it's legal in the West, but in Saudi Arabia, it is illegal.
On the street of Buraida when he was arrested. What was different about that time, he was so young. Yes, it affected my life deeply, but it also inspired me more than it was a pain in my personal life, because I saw how people rushed to the streets to chant for freedom, to seek liberty, to ask for the release of political prisoners and all that. And for me, I was...
So he's telling that people, as a result of the call of Salman Al-Awdah in the early 90s, this is the time when Sheikh bin Baz is alive, Al-Uthaymeen, Al-Albani, these great ulama, and he's on the streets, getting people rushing to the streets on the testimony of his son and also on the legal accusations that is written regarding him, that people are going out chanting for freedom in Saudi Arabia and liberty and for political prisoners to be freed. This is the first call.
The release of political prisoners and all that. And for me, I was seeing all that, I thought, well, that was worth it. I mean, living in this environment where people will chant your name because you called for the freedom and all that. And that actually inspired me in my life to read more, to get into education. That first arrest of my father, for 2 years he was held incommunicado, and then they allowed, of course, visits and calls regularly, maybe with different...
And just to give context, this arrest didn't come right away. It was after the likes of Sheikh bin Baz and some scholars contacting and sending a letter to Salman Al-Awdah that there's a number of incitement in your lectures and your talks that could lead to harm. And as a result, he's asking the Islamic education to put a pause to your lectures and your talks, that you're no longer allowed to speak publicly because of this. And for you to refrain, and if you're willing to stop this, then you're allowed to go back to your classes. So we'll read here, inshallah, or listen to some of what has been said in that letter of Sheikh bin Baz to him. So this is a legal document that Sheikh bin Baz wrote, and he's writing it to the Saudi authorities, starting with the king, regarding what's happening from Salman Al-Awdah and Safar Hawali. So they're saying, in particular, they studied this issue with the senior ulama. And we know the senior ulama, they have about 22 scholars. They get together occasionally to study ongoing issues in Saudi Arabia. And from what they're studying is the statements of Salman Al-Awdah and Safar Hawali in the light of Quran and Sunnah, if are these statements acceptable. And after studying, and then they give the decision what the Saudi government should take in terms of legal actions towards these individuals. So it's a long letter. In a nutshell, they were requested to refrain, and you'll be allowed to continue to resume back your classes and your lectures. If not, then you're no longer allowed to give talks. And Salman Al-Awdah and Safar Hawali, in particular Salman Al-Awdah, insisted. So Salman Al-Awdah was ordered to attend a rehab session and was banned from conducting sermons and lectures. But he disregarded the order, continuing preaching the hate about and all that statements he was spreading because of the presence of American soldiers. They were present and was sentenced in 1994 to 5 years in prison. The charges included at that time spreading hate rhetoric that jeopardized the sanctity and religious stability of Saudi society. And this is it, the first, and this is quoted here on Arab News. And he was arrested until 1999 on those charges. And during his arrest at that time, there was an uproar. And from those who made the uproar, they said Osama bin Laden about the arrest of Salman Al-Awdah. Because in an interview, and as quoted, and you can return back to it, Osama bin Laden said that Salman Al-Awdah was someone that he was influenced by or he looks up to. And here a quote is found on news channels. Osama bin Laden tried to use al-Ouda's imprisonment as a rally cry against the house of the royal family. So that's how it started. And also Safar Hawali, similar time, we're going to take them together. He was, at that time, there was charges laid onto him. And even now, such as destabilizing security, spreading chaos, inciting public opinion, and breaking loyalty to the ruler. And also from the charges is his statements, somewhat in praise of Osama bin Laden. Like he wrote a book, أما تنظيم القاعدة فأعرف الشيخ أسامة بن لادن رحمه الله كما قرأته ما كتب وسمعته بعض أشرطته وأعرف بعض أفراد التنظيم كما أعرف الشيخ عبد الله عزام رحمه الله وهذا التنظيم قابل للإصلاح وجهاد في أفغانستان مما يشكرون عليه لا سيما في معركة ترابورة وكذا اهتمامهم بالقضية الفلسطينية ولا أعلم أنهم خوارج وإنما لديهم أخطاء في ترتيب الأولويات. يعني saying about these individuals, in particular Osama bin Laden, I don't know them to be خوارج. وغلو في الجهاد, and they just had certain errors of not giving priorities, and they had extremism about jihad. Sheikh Osama يعتبر رجال الأمن في السعودية إخوانا له. And he says that Osama bin Laden did not do the explosions in Haramain. Rather, he considered the security police in Saudi Arabia to be his fellow brothers. And we'll hear later on words of Osama bin Laden applauding the bombs that happened in Riyadh. We'll here continue Safar Hawali's statement about Osama bin Laden.
الأفغاني يوجد من الشباب الذين يدعون الأفغان من يكفر الشيخ أسامة بن لادن تكفيرا ويعمل ضده وهم هؤلاء قد يعملون أعمالا وهم لا ينتمون إليه وقد يوجد أيضا من يعتقد أنه
اسمح لي فضلا منك لماذا تسميه الشيخ أسامة بن لادن؟
يعني احنا بطبيعتنا
عفوا.
He's having an interview and he quoted Osama bin Laden by saying Sheikh. The person said, sorry to interrupt, why are you calling him a Sheikh?
أبدا نحن أي طالب علم وأي أخرنا في الإسلام وأي إنسان له سابقة وفضل نسميه باسمه ويظل بريئا حتى تثبت إدانته.
He says anyone that has a background and a good virtue of history, we call him by his name.
حتى ولو قتل وفجر وأهلك المسلمين.
لا نتكلم عن من قتل وأقول يظل بريئا.
He's the person, the question says to him, even if he kills and blows up the Muslims, you're going to still call him that?
حتى تثبت إدانته.
وتلك ردة ظاهرة.
He says until that is proven. Who doesn't know about Osama bin Laden?
العسكر والأدهى والأمر أن هؤلاء العلماء يعتبرون طاغوت الرياض ولي أمر. أنا أنظر بإجلال كبير.
First clip, Osama bin Laden is calling these people, the rulers of Saudi, طاغوت. They're not the wali al-amr, they're not the rulers. Another clip of Osama bin Laden.
واحترام إلى هؤلاء الرجال العظام على أنهم رفعوا الهوان عن جبين أمتنا سيأمرون فجروا في الرياض فجروا في الرياض فجروا في الرياض.
And he's saying those people who were applauding them, they inspired us, whether it be the people that caused explosions in Riyadh. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. So these are from the charges laid out against Safar Hawali, and we'll share more inshallah.
هل يجوز لنا أن نطلق على الحكومة الكويتية أو نسميها الحكومة الشرعية؟ ومع الأسف كلمة الشرعية الآن أصبحت لعبة. الآن يقول نحن مع الشرع.
They're asking, and this is still at the beginning, we're still giving the timeline of Salman Al-Awdah. And the reason we're starting with him, because he was the leader of these reformers, a lot of them that had been arrested. He's saying, if he was asked, is Kuwait and the government a legislated government? He says this word legislative became a joke, لعبة.
في لبنان نحن مع الشرعية في لبنان. ما هي الشرعية في لبنان؟ الشرعية في لبنان عودة حكامها النصارى، عودة حكامها النصارى، هذه الشرعية. كذلك يقولون مع الشرعية في الكويت، يعني عودة حكامها الذين أخرجوا منها. وفي الواقع أنني أقول نحن لسنا متعبدين بالطاعة لحكام حسين ولا لآل صباح ولا لغيرهم. نحن صاحبنا هو الذي يرفع راية لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
The response saying, we're not being in a state that we have to take it as an act of worship, to obey the family of Al Sabah, that royal family of Kuwait, obeying them. And he says the only person we obey is the one that raises La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah flag. And this is from the first of the incitements that started with Salman Al-Awdah, and it led to his imprisonment. During that time, Sheikh Muhammad Salih Al-Uthaymeen, when he was asked about listening to Salman Al-Awdah and Safar Hawali, he says, I advise you to listen to the tapes of Ibn Baz and Albani and أشرطة العلماء المعروفين بالاعتدال, the tapes of the ulama that are known for their balanced views, وعدم الثورة الفكرية, and not for their revolutionistic ideologies. So this is from the starting point. People are noticing certain things from Salman Al-Awdah and Safar Hawali. Also from those times, those early timings, would add to the fuel to the fire and what led to his arrest the first time, is he was making a lot of petitions at that time. There's a petition he made that was called Al-Mudhakkira Al-Nasiha. You can Google it, you can find it, even with his, he signed it, him and others. And they were demanding the king, the Saudi king at that time, King Fahd, to do a number of demands. And in the wordings, indirectly, it's stating in there like, or else there may be a revolution. There may be this. Indirect wordings. This is how it started. And some scholars spoke against this. They said, this letter of yours, publicly like this, in this type of petition, is going to cause more harm than good. And from those people that signed that petition was Muhammad al-Mus'ari and Sa'ad al-Faqih. And they later on moved. Supposedly some of them fled when the whole arrest happened with Salman Al-Awdah. They fled to London. And they formed an office there.
بشهادة محمد المسعري
سيكونون في خطر. سلمان العودة
وسفر الحوالي ورجل
باعتبارهم ماذا؟
أعضاء في مجلس شورى هيئة النصيحة والإصلاح.
التي أسسها بن لادن.
اللي أسسها بن لادن أو هم أسسوها ما يهمنا من
يعني التي كان لها مكتب في لندن ورأسه خالد فواز. إذا كان نعم.
وقبل هروب سعد الفقيه إلى الخارج.
And here the interviewer exposes them that say this office isn't originally established by Osama bin Laden that you all forming a council at in London. Salman Al-Awdah, Safar Hawali. He said, yes, or they. It was clear that this is someone that you all formed a council and within an office, that this office and this type of group was initially of Osama bin Laden. So these are some of the accusations.
That regime has declared itself to be an Islamic regime and has kept the world in dark about its true nature. It is not an Islamic regime. It is an anti-Islamic, a kufr regime. We must recognize this fact. And kufr.
And the same Muhammad al-Mas'ari, the person that was with Salman Al-Awdah and all that petition, when they formed it in London, they are protesting the streets. You can even see there's videos online. And they have their posters and saying Saudi regime is a kufr regime, the anti-Islamic, at that time. And he went to London to complain to those people, the kuffar there, about Saudi. And they're establishing their political committee in their office from there.
أنا يعني بكل أمانة كنت أروج ما كنا نروج لا لنفسي ولا للدكتور المسعري كنت أروج لسلمان العودة بصفته يعني خميني السنة يعني لكن
Here's Sa'ad al-Faqih, one of the well-known figures of Salman Al-Awdah and Safar Hawali at that time. He's explaining the whole story of it. That Salman Al-Awdah was one of the leaders of this movement that we're trying to do, a revolution for Saudi. And we would call him the Khomeini, but the Sunni version of Khomeini. You know, Khomeini caused a revolution in Shia over there in Iran. They're saying Salman Al-Awdah, he was the revolutionist individual that is the Sunni version of Khomeini. In that part.
لكن كنا وقت اعتقاله كنا نعتبره شخص ناضج وبعقلية واسعة الأفق ومتحدث لبق ويستطيع الحديث مع الإسلاميين ومع الليبراليين ومع غيرهم ويتكلم بطريقة شاملة انقلابية شاملة منهجية وانقلابية شاملة.
They said he was a specialist in causing revolution and know how to speak to the liberals one time, to the Islamic theologians. This is what they're saying we liked about Salman Al-Awdah.
So anyway, during the Arab Spring, he supported the revolution in Egypt, he supported the revolution in Tunisia, and he wrote a book called On Revolution, Questions on Revolution, and was translated into English as well.
And he's speaking now, the son of Salman Al-Awdah, speaking about his father, and he's saying that when the Arab Spring came, he called for it, he promoted it in a number of countries. We'll give examples, inshallah, with his voice. And just to let everyone know that we're just doing this quickly brief, or else there's detailed documentaries about each individual with their audios, with their images, with flyers of theirs, and the whole timeline. And also, there's the criminalized, specialized court system of Saudi Arabia that lay out their charges. You can return back to some of the charges that are later against them. But we're just doing this quickly, just to not make the video too long. But here we'll listen, inshallah, further.
In which he theorizes on how how politics should be presented and implemented in the Arab world, and especially in the Gulf, and how reforms should be implemented in order to include peoples of the Arab world, of the Gulf and the Arab world generally. And he, in that book,
He's talking about a book that Salman Al-Awdah wrote called As'ilat al-Thawra, and questions for revolution, and he answers and he's promoting it, and it caused what we know and a lot of the bloodshed. And this book was banned in Saudi Arabia. Then he later on shared it as PDFs online. It was banned first as a publishing, and he still went on to keep sharing it. So you can see the chances are given. This book is going to cause problems for the peace in that country. It's already stable. If you cause these revolutions, it may cause more harm than good.
In that book, talked about how to, and in 2011, he spearheaded a campaign and a petition called Toward a State of Rights and Institutions. In that petition, it's a very small, brief, one page kind of petition in which they demanded, for example, an elected government, one. Second.
And so here, Salman Al-Awdah requested for there to be an elected state. Another audio, Salman Al-Awdah's son, was when he's speaking about Fawzan, against Fawzan, he was saying that my father wanted a democratic system, but they refused.
Government, one. Second, elected parliament. Third, empowering women. They demanded protection of minorities. They demanded support for youths, and economic diversity, and they demanded some kind of accountability.
And this is after he was released from prison the first time, in 1999. They asked him, have you changed your views? He says, he came out on television. He goes, Naam at-taghayyur. Yes, I'm going to change. And then he started even speaking about Osama bin Laden in a negative way. And so, for this reason, even the son in his interview mentions, they let him be and for a time period until he started inciting more and more about other countries on his public channels. That's where they would lead to another arrest. We'll share it here, inshallah. And New York Times, they published a statement about Salman Al-Awdah, that he was a caller to democracy. They said the Gulf, they're quoting him, the Gulf governments are fighting Arab democracy because they fear it will come here. This is from what they're saying, quoting. And then Salman Al-Awdah, he said, look what they have done in Egypt, sending billions of dollars right after the coup last summer. This is a Gulf project, not an Egyptian project. And the Saudi government is losing its friends. Talking about Saudi. If it continues on this path, it will lose its own people and invite disaster. This is from what they consider could lead to incitement of problems and statements with these type of indirect threats that Salman Al-Awdah was saying. Also in his book called Questions of Revolution, the quoting here, New York Times says, his book, him saying it was banned here, and that democracy is the only legitimate form of government. So when you hear New York Times quoting him, and then his son is saying it on audio, he wanted a democratic system, and then he wrote an article, had 31 statements from it of elected parliament, elected leader. These are things that it's hard to say everything's a lie. And 37 out of all those charges. And from one arrest to the other, or the house arrest, all of it is on lies. We have to be fair, we have to look into the matter.
So with that, the other element is his embracement of reforms, democracy, real change in the kingdom. So
he embraced reforms, democracy, real change in the kingdom. This is what Salman Al-Awdah wanted. And as we know, it's Saudi Arabia. It's run by Sharia law, not democracy. It's different.
مبشرات. والله أنا متفائل صراحة. أنا في نظري إنه واقع الأمة في كثير ما يدعو للأمل والتبشير والتفاؤل، سواء على نظرنا إلى جانب التغيرات في الدول، مثلا وضع تونس، وضع ليبيا.
They're asking Salman Al-Awdah, what's your thoughts about what's going on now? He said, I'm positive, I'm optimistic. What's happening in Tunisia? And this is the Arab Spring. We noticed more harm. People were dying, buildings were being destroyed. Planes were just going over and destroying so much infrastructure. Then I'm looking at a bright about the future and positive. We'll hear more, inshallah.
وضع حتى مصر أعتقد أنه في تحول كبير. أصبح هناك احترام للشعب واحترام للمواطن. ما هو أصبح المواطن أنه مثل ما كان سابقا أنه والله جرجر وإما أنه سجين ولا أنه طريد. في بلاد أوروبا أكبر نسبة من الناس في أوروبا من التوانسة والليبيين. هؤلاء رجعوا إلى بلادهم، صاروا يأخذون حقوقهم، صاروا. طبعا هذا لا يعني أبدا ومستحيل أن يتصور الإنسان أن كل الأشياء هذه سوف تتم في طرفة عين أو سوف تتم وكأنه قرار ينفذ. لا، في ناس عندهم آراء وآراء الناس ستختلف وبيكون مظاهرات وبيكون اختلافات وقد يكون في.
And bear in mind, some of these audios, some of them are recorded in his houses, even though he's requested not to do lectures. And like even Yasir Qadi, we shared an audio of him saying that he visited him at a time where he wasn't allowed, and he was inspired by him greatly. So a lot of people, they'll meet up, and some of them is public lectures.
مشكلات، لكن الناس مشوا على طريق جيد. وقبلهم تركيا أيضا خطت هذه الخطوات وربما كانت ضربت المثل والقدوة في انفتاح البلاد الإسلامية على بعضها، انفتاحها على شعوبها، وهذا بيأثر حتى على الشعوب الأخرى. أنا دائما أقول الثورة ليست هي النمط الوحيد كما يتصور البعض. لا، الثورة يعني ليست شيئا محبدا. إذا
So he goes on to mentioning what he sees of good effects of these revolutions, even on other countries, and other countries learning from it, and so on and so forth. This is what he's saying, but we found that it was more of those countries just cracking down on people and making it even harder, practicing masjid, even classes, because of the actions of these people. They made it harder. You can't even get together in some places now. They're always thinking that you're going to do what these people are doing. This is the positivity he's talking about. SubhanAllah. Then he goes on to say it is afdal, a better future.
قانون هذا الذي لا يسأل عن الذمة المالية للمسؤول ويترفع عن سجن الفاسد ولا يعيد أذن الجمل التي.
Now he's talking about the Saudi laws. And audio publicly.
أي وطن، أي شعب، أي إعلام يستلذ لحفلة شواء لمختلسين صغار ويكرم بجاعاته المتخمة. أي هيئات تلك التي تطارد فرائسها السمان من المكاتب الفاخرة والشوارع والمدن والأوطان تباسي ضخمة لأياد طويلة. أي ضمير هذا الذي يساوي بين مجتمع صارم يطيح بالكبار ويطاردهم في المحاكم ويجعل منهم كائنات منبوذة وبين مجتمع يلبسهم البشت باسم الله أو الوطن أو الشعب. من أين لك هذا المنصب وهذا الكرسي الطويل؟ من أين لك هذه الثروة وهذه الأساطيل؟ من أين لك هذه الشركات وتلك الأبراج؟ من أين لك هذا الضمير التقي الذي جعلته نقطة تفوقك وأبعدت روح المؤسسات عن ميدانك؟ من أين لك هذا القلب الذي رمى مجتمعات تحت خط الفقر وأبقى لك
So he's going on mentioning it's even the title of this video online. It's clear that it's a controversial video. There's ways of addressing evil or anything of mistakes, but this type of address publicly to the rulers or about their systematic approach in certain things could have more harm than good, we've noticed, especially in these type of societies, where the people, they're very zealous and they're taken by the slightest uproar and it could cause more harm. Also, he formed a forum called Youth Rising Forum, Nahdatu al-Shabab, the rising of the youth. And we're going to hear how he would go to Kuwait, he would go to different places. And even I will mention here an incident where he traveled to the Philippines. He wasn't supposed to travel, but he said he changed his name from Salman to Suleiman, and he was able to get on a flight. And they said he met up with someone that later on was connected to the Riyadh bombings and some of the figures. Because we seen there's connecting dots, certain things are adding slowly. We'll mention this slowly, inshallah. Another thing to add, the first time he was arrested, they said there was, since the time of Juhayman, to that time it never happened, and where an explosion happened in Saudi Arabia where the security officials were blown up. When Salman Al-Awdah and Safar Hawali were arrested, there was an uproar. The people blew up a Saudi building from these people who are supposedly enthusiastic followers of Salman Al-Awdah.
أكثر كلمة يطلقوها على حكام السعودية أنهم خدام الحرمين الشريفين، وهذه يعلم الله أنها أكبر كذبة في التاريخ. بما أنه الآن جاي الحج فإحنا راح نتكلم عن الحج. يا إخواني، أكبر كذبة يمكن سطرت في التاريخ إن آل سعود خدام الحرمين الشريفين. يعلم الله، يعني أنا لو بالنسبة لي يقولوا مين خادم الحرمين الشريفين؟ آل سعود، أقول لا، أبو جهل. أبو جهل كان هو خادم أكثر منكم صراحة. والآن بنتحدى الوطنجية من هنا إلى يوم القيامة إنهم يطلعوا محمد بن سلمان أفضل من أبو جهل في أمور الحج.
And so here he says the biggest lie of history. And he's saying that the Saudi kings, the custodians of the custodians of the two sacred haram cities, and that's the biggest lie in history, and that Abu Jahl is better custodian than Muhammad bin Salman. And this is what you can hear. And this is someone who was raised in his house, and he's saying he learned how to deal with the Saudi government from Safar Hawali.
عودة بدأ يتنكب هذا النهج في هذه المسألة، فأصبح من دعاة تحرير المرأة، وذلك حينما قام بالإشراف والرعاية لملتقى النهضة الشبابي المختلط بين البنين والبنات.
He said from what the callers Salman Al-Awdah was known for, تحرير المرأة. We want to empower or free the woman. The woman is oppressed in Saudi. This is what they mentioned. And that the woman, adhering to her Islamic values, we need to free her.
وهو الملتقى الأول الذي كان في قطر.
أنا قلت له نريد أن يكون الدور للشباب والبنات يتحدثون هم.
And the first way was by making women and men in the same gathering, where he's having this youth forum and it's men and women together and so close to one another, and he wants to hear from both sides. This is the way how he empowers the women and frees them, as he's mentioning. We're going to hear.
تناقشون هم ونحن نستمع وقد نعقب مثل غيرنا.
تفضل. إذا كان عندنا إنه إحنا نعلم إنه سنصل للنهضة إن شاء الله.
So they're getting the woman to speak, and we're going to reach to the rising, of what they wanted. Another woman mentions, we'll play it here.
وهذا هدفنا. يعني الحين يقولون الناس إنه ما طاح رئيس مجلس الوزراء وهو ستيل الحين بمكانه، كان هدفها ثاني هو رفع مستوى المطالبات السياسية، حيث إن إحنا نشيل الحالة القدسية اللي تصير حق رموز الأشخاص كونوا من أسرة آل سعود. فكنا بهالحملة هدفها المعلن إسقاط رئيس مجلس الوزراء إنه هو إنسان.
So you can hear another example of these youth rising forums that they have available online. A sister says that one of the goals that we were doing of initiatives was to make the Prime Minister to collapse, to remove him. And this is some of the discussions they're having. And some of the people that are part of these discussions of speakers is all sorts of people that he teamed up with. Teamed up with the Shia guy, teamed up with some guy who's, I don't know if he's in Israel, and then he teamed up with different speakers of liberals. This is supposedly to create a revolutionistic youth. And even they mentioned that they were creating a group that would supposedly cause uproar and take over Kuwait. And this is from some of the Nahda that he wanted, the rising of the youth. So here we're going to mention some of these 37 charges that was laid against him. But first we'll mention the context. He was arrested in 2017. He was first, during that time, it was where there was the cut of diplomatic ties of Saudi with Qatar. And he was the same person that would be connected to Qatar, asking Qatar to fund their office in Britain, those people that we mentioned that causing all that harm. And Qatar at that time was funding other groups that were part of Iran and other groups that Saudi Arabia referred to them as being terrorists. It was causing harm, so they wanted to cut that off. And they wanted Salman Al-Awdah to take a stance because he was part of all that. He was caught in that mess. So instead of him taking a stance to stop being part of all this mess, he tweeted making a dua that Allah harmonizes the hearts between two, not actually carrying out what was mentioned. We'll here share some of what his son says. Before that, we'll play here.
التي صبرت بها المملكة على سلمان العودة وأعوانه، فسنة عن سنة لم يزداد إلا تمردا على ولاة الأمر وصنع مظاهرات وإثارة فتن، محاولين إشعال فتيل الفوضى والسماح للعدو بدخول أراضي المملكة. في سبتمبر عام 2017 تم إلقاء القبض على العودة بتهم عديدة منها الإفساد في الأرض بالسعي المتكرر.
So the first charge laid against him, spreading mischief multiple times. And they're saying from how many years, how many times we've been counting messages, online statements that looks like you're inciting heavy protests that can cause breaking glasses and harm in Saudi Arabia. And they're saying this is repeating, and also a way where it can incite severe hatred, animosity to the rulers that will bring harm with it. So this is the first charge.
الإفساد في الأرض بالسعي المتكرر لزعزعة بناء الوطن وإحياء الفتنة العمياء وتأليب المجتمع على الحكام. الارتباط بشخصيات وتنظيمات وعقد اللقاءات والمؤتمرات داخل وخارج المملكة لتحقيق أجندة تنظيم الإخوان الإرهابي ضد الوطن وحكامه.
Meeting with several individuals inside and outside of the country as a way to establish the Muslim Brotherhood, because he became really close with them. And we'll share a clip later on of his praises for them. He became really close. And we know how Muslim Brotherhood is when they get into a country, how much harm they can cause. So starting of the revolution was meeting up with these individuals that Saudi Arabia deemed, and a lot of these countries deemed as a terrorist organization, Muslim Brotherhood.
وحكامه. الدعوة للخلافات في العالم العربي وتحريضه للزج بالمملكة في الثورات الداخلية ودعم الثورات في البلاد العربية من خلال ترويجه لمقاطع تدعم الثورات.
He kept saying we need to do a khilafah in Saudi, we need to do a khilafah, and which is good. We know generally khilafah is good, but it's not in that way. You're gonna cause people. As the current leader, there's different ways of getting that to occur, inshallah.
الانضمام لتجمعات واتحادات دينية مخالفة لمنهج كبار العلماء المعتبرين وتقوم على أسس تهدف لزعزعة الأمن في البلاد والوطن العربي.
Another charge that was laid against him is that he got together with religious groups that opposed the way of the senior scholars, and these groups would give their own verdicts. And we'll share later on who they're referring to, like Muhammad Salih Al-Munajjid, AbdulAziz At-Turayfi. They're all close, Alwan, Arifi, and they would do their own thing, opposing the ulama, the major scholars, and that were alive, and to return back to them. But they had their own verdicts, which was causing the place to lack stability because of the confusion they were doing, and people to lack trust in their senior ulama. And things were organized. They have a council. It wasn't fawda, it wasn't chaos.
الوطني العربي دعم الثورات والانشقاقات والصمود ضد الحكومات الانضواء تحت
funding certain groups of revolutionist groups in different places against their countries and supporting with words.
قيادة أحد المصنفين على قائمة الإرهاب يوسف القرضاوي وتوليه منصب الأمين المساعد في الاتحاد.
And joining alongside Yusuf Qaradawi, who was considered to be under the terrorist list to Saudi and other countries, and becoming his assistant. He became like his assistant and the members of that board.
تأليب الرأي العام وإثارة الفتنة وتأجيج المجتمع وذوي السجناء في قضايا أمنية للمطالبة بإخراج السجناء على منصات إعلامية.
He publicly demanded that people that are in prison to come out. Publicly demanding it to be released. This is sometimes it can cause more harm. There's different ways. There's someone you deem that was prison unjustly, but like this publicly, and we're finding this pattern repeat, and we're going to share, inshallah.
You know, he was one of the most popular figures on Twitter. He has like 13 to 14 million followers on Twitter. Was one of the most followed people in Saudi Arabia. So they asked him to tweet. He refused. And when he tweeted saying that may God harmonize between the hearts of the rulers for the best of their peoples, they considered it as defiance. And hours after that tweet, he was arrested. My uncle tweeted 2 days after that about the arrest of my father. He was arrested as well. So the members of my family were banned from traveling. I tweeted. They harassed me. They suspended my passport. And then in 2018, just 3 weeks after, 3 weeks before the killing of Khashoggi, they transferred my father to court, and they demanded the death penalty against him on 37 charges, including corrupting the kingdom by seeking to transform the monarchy into a constitutional monarchy, inciting rebellion against the kingdom, disagreeing with the foreign policy of the state. That's another charge. Another charge is mocking the government achievements. Just imagine, that's a charge, mocking the government achievements. Another charge is having books that are banned in the kingdom. And so
certain books that were known, that are the books of the Harakiyin, revolution there's a lot of problems with the youth reading those books. So the Saudi government, to be on the safe side, they banned those type of books.
Other charges, and the trial is still ongoing, but it's still there.
Here's that journalist who he was referring to, Jamal Khashoggi. Here we'll play it, inshallah.
من أجمل المتغيرين الشيخ سلمان العودة. الشيخ سلمان العودة الذي كتب كتابا في يوم من الأيام خصه بمهاجمة الشيخ الغزالي.
So you can see that this journalist, one of the things that people that he was inspired by was Salman Al-Awdah, he's mentioning.
حوار هادئ مع الغزالي.
انظر إلى الشيخ سلمان اليوم، هذا الشيخ الجميل المبدع الذي يأخذ الشباب ويحملهم إلى العالم.
So look at Salman Al-Awdah. He takes all the youth and he takes them to the world. Pay attention to these words, please.
يجب أن نتغير.
اتهمت من خلال انه لانه انت صحفي في باكستان او في افغانستان
Then the interviewer goes on to mention the accusations based on this journalist. But going back, this person was inspired by Salman Al-Awdah. Another thing too, we'll play the audio, but its time is already prolonged. A particular audio, it's online, the 15-minute span. He went to with Libya and demanding the prisoners over there be released. And he got involved in the Libyan politics, and the people he's going to release are people that were with al-Qaeda. And then later on, these same people were the people that caused that big revolution. He used them against the revolution in Libya. And we see more harm happened. Bloodshed, a lot of killing. And so these are all accusations that is adding up towards him. Him and also Safar Hawali, they were all together on this. Here we want to share a clip of Sheikh Salih Fawzan, who's asked about the Saudi government arresting the likes of these individuals.
وفقها الله بإيقاف بعض الدعاة الذين عليهم ملاحظات. هل يجوز الطعن في الدولة والكلام فيها جراء ذلك؟ الدولة مهمتها أنها تكف الشر عن المسلمين، فإذا حصل من أحد مخالفة وخطأ فللدولة أن تمنعه وأن توقفه حتى يرجع عن خطئه ويعتدل في طريقه. هذا من باب الإصلاح، وهو مسؤولية ولاة الأمور.
So mention, they asked, can we use this as a way to speak bad about the Saudi government, of them stopping certain speakers of theirs for certain observations? Sheikh Salih Fawzan mentions that this is the role of the government, that they protect the public, of the Muslims from harm. The responsibility, if they see that, they have to put an end till the person rectifies and stops. This is from the angle of rectification of society. The next individual we wanted to speak about is Muhammad Salih Al-Munajjid, the founder of Islam Q&A and also Zad Academy. He was as well arrested in 2017, and there was a number of accusations and charges laid against him, approximately 8 charges altogether. From the charges, because just to give context, there were 2016, he was requested to withhold from giving sermons because of a controversial sermon he gave. So the place that he was taken to was Specialized Criminal Court. They did muhakama to him, the hearing from the first of accusations. They mentioned that ارتباطه بجماعة إخوان المسلمين المصنفة إرهابية في المملكة. His connection of ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is labeled as a terrorist group in Saudi Arabia. And they mentioned that him and Salman Al-Awdah and Awad al-Qarni and others, whereas they were istikhbarat, this is one of the accusations, they were sharing messages to Muslim Brotherhoods, private, of things that relate to Saudi Arabia, and they were their ties of planning for certain things, because they were planning a revolution, and they're saying these are the people that were the members of that plot. And here we'll share further, inshallah, the accusations. From it is the charges is his support for Daesh and also Jabhat al-Nusra. And we know that Jabhat al-Nusra is formed from Daesh, mini version, and that's why even Ahmed al-Shara, the current president of Syria, he freed himself when he was on that CNN interviews online. He said they realized they were extreme and they were misguided. And he distanced himself from them. And some of those people, they even have a video saying we're going to go to Saudi, go to the Kaaba and free the Kaaba. And we're going to liberate the Kaaba. These are the people. So he was support for these people. And also they said they found him in a WhatsApp group with Houthis on WhatsApp. They said the first thing was Salman Al-Munajjid 2016. He was prevented from giving a khutbah in some of the northern places of Jeddah because of some of the wordings having tatarruf and affecting the unity of the land, extremism. And this is by Islamic Affairs. They have issued that first. Also from the, it was his support for encouraging the youth and the Muslims to go to Iraq and Syria at that time where it was a lot of confusion and more harm was happening. So they used this as a charge against him as well. And we'll share the audios of this just so we can follow up if this is true, inshallah. The next accusation of charge that was laid against him was التستر على قياديين من تنظيم الإخوان السري في السعودية. And there was a concealment upon certain leaders of the formation of the Muslim Brotherhood in Saudi Arabia. He knew of it, the whole formation of it. And it was done secretly, and they got this through the messages. And also they add within it تستر على مشاركة أحد الأشخاص بالمشاركة في ملتقى النهضة في الدوحة. And that he was also concealing about participation of one of the people in what is happening in the rising forum of Doha, meeting there. Also, what was taking place in Libya, support for that, they were mentioning this as well. So we're not looking at the other issues that are not like legal issues. Like there are other criticism laid against him that are about some of his views and some of the things of his website. Those things are aside. We're just looking at more of his what led to his arrest, inshallah. From the charges, التواصل مع فصائل العسكرية المقاتلة في سوريا والعراق. And he was communicating with those people that were fighting in Syria and Iraq. So he got to this level where he was even on call with them, talking with them, people of Jabhat al-Nusra and these people that are considered a terrorist group and the harm they were saying. Because we know the harm of Daesh and Jabhat al-Nusra. These people, when they got control of certain places, they end up killing the Muslims. Also, what they have charges is what people laid out of him declaring King Fahd to be a kafir or a taghut. We'll share a clip of some of them quoting this from him from private sittings.
جلسة خاصة أخ الله يجزاه خير للنقل هذا قال وفجعنا ونحن جايين من مكان بعيد نزور مشايخ في الشرقية وجمعنا مع مجلس خاص وإذا به يقول الملك فهد رجل طاغوت نعوذ بالله هذا هو المنهج السعودي.
And so this is an example.
كان الله يريد يعتمد على الخطابات العاطفية وهو يحس بالخطر لأن توالي يعني ذهاب الآن تقريبا 200 قتيل من حزب الشيطان وصلوا إلى لبنان. فهو من شعوره بالخطر يقول ليتني كنت معكم ليتني رصاصكم ليتني يحاول شحذ الهمم. حسن خان الله يستلم المكبر الصوت ليتكلم مع جنوده في الجبهة معناها الموضوع متفاقم. خامنئي ينادي بالجهاد، معناها المسألة عندهم يعني فعلا أحس الرافضة بالخطر. يحاول بشعار المظلوميات يعني أن يعمل لنفسه هالة أو دعاية، لكن بالحقيقة إذا كان جنوده يذبحون الآن هم يقصفون القصير بيتا بيتا ويبيدون الأسر والعوائل عائلة عائلة. يعني حسن خان الله يمكن أن يذكر بعبارة أبي جهل إنها الحرب إذن، وهو يعني واضح أن الغرب والشرق ما فعلوا له شيئا. إذا كان أعلنوا مثلا الحرب على جبهة النصرة أو على الكتائب المجاهدة، والكتائب المجاهدة معروف أنها تدافع عن المظلومين، وجبهة النصرة قد قامت بإجراءين يعني حكيمين في المدة الأخيرة، نأت بنفسها عما يسمى بدولة العراق والشام وعن الأشياء الخارجية والولاءات الخارجية، وهذه خطوة مهمة جدا. ثانيا دخلت في
As you can see, like in the context, I've been praising Jabhat al-Nusra, some of these campaigns of these groups, these Takfiri groups, but even with how they were with Iraq, Daesh, you said, oh, they were killing Hezbollah, but we know you can't, but these people are more harm.
تحالفات مع كتائب إسلامية لأجل يعني القيام بالمهام الكبيرة، ومن ذلك معركة القصير. فيتهم هؤلاء بالإرهاب، أما يعني منظمة حسن اللات وحزب الشيطان ما هي الحرب التي تشن عليهم؟ لا شيء. هل سمعت عن غارة طائرات بغير طيار على قيادات حزب الشيطان؟
حزب Daesh and حزب Jabhat al-Nusra accused of being terrorists, but Hezbollah, they're not being accused of terrorists. Focus, they're both wrong, but to use this to defend one side is not correct.
هل سمعت أن أمريكا سوت شيء يعني لحزب الشيطان؟ هل حاصرت مثلا ممتلكات حزب الشيطان؟ هل أغلقت له يعني مكاتب في الخارج؟ هل حاصرت التبرعات لحزب الشيطان؟ لا، مؤسساته تعمل وكذلك فإن يعني هو ينادي الآن بقضية الجماعات التكفيرية، يعزف حسن خان الله على عوتر الجماعات التكفيرية. طيب من هي الجماعات التكفيرية الآن التي تقاتل في سوريا يعني مناصرة المسلمين دفاعا عن المظلومين؟ يعني هي حتى جهاد دفع، هو جهاد دفع يعني.
He said, what are these Takfiri groups? These Takfiri groups are defending the Muslims in Syria. These Takfiri groups, they called Saudi Arabia kafir, and the people in there kuffar. And if they deem you kuffar, they're going to come for you next. Because these people are extreme. So this is one thing. Another thing too, that from the charges was laid against him was money that he was sending to some of these individuals, these groups overseas. They caught him and they found that he was using it to make it look like he was sending to family members, but it was initially for these groups, and that's from the charges that was laid. That type of fundraising to these groups wasn't allowed on a public level, because they would even go to Kuwait and say, we're gathering for the orphans. There's a flyer with his name and a different number of people, and they were sending it. And this will happen with Khalid Rashid too, we'll show inshallah. They will say, we're gathering for the orphans, or we're going to the needy, 50 families, and they end up sending money to these people who are supposedly the real fighters, and these are people of Daesh, ISIS, and Jabhat al-Nusra. Later on, people that Ahmed Shara, the leader, current president, freed himself from. In terms of, he said, these people had mistakes, I was young, I didn't know better.
يعني يتزامن نصر الجنود في سوريا مع نصر الحشود في مصر، لأن هناك استقطاب واصطفاف حصل نتيجة معركة الشريعة في مصر، أظهرت التفوق الإسلامي الكاسح على فلول العلمنة والفساد ليميز الله الخبيث من الطيب، وخرج شباب مصر ينصر الشريعة بحشد عظيم لأول مرة في تاريخ جامعة القاهرة. فإذا سيلتقي يعني نصر الحشود في مصر مع نصر الجنود في الشام.
And then also regarding Libya, he gave support to the Mufti there, Sadiq al-Gharyani, for the protest fatwa. And this type of person is Sadiq al-Gharyani, someone who encourages to overthrow most of the Muslim governments. And he speaks about them in terms of, it's clear, we can share audios about that as well. And he praises them on two different occasions. صادق الغرياني.
طيب يا أخي، نعم الشيخ الصادق من العلماء المعروفين وممن تضلع في مذهب الإمام مالك رحمه الله، وله خبرة بالإفتاء كبيرة، وهو حجة. وإذا سألتموه
هو حجة. This is a clear takfiri. This is a clear person astray. Listen to his talks. To say this type of person is a great alim and he's a hujjah, he's a proof. This is not correct.
أفتاكم
أقول في بطن حديثي كلنا جبهة النصرة. تقول آلاف الأمهات اللاتي فقدن أبناءهن في هذه الثورة المباركة كلنا جبهة النصرة. يقول مئات الآلاف من الأطفال الذين فقدوا الحليب فقام الجيش الحر البطل بتزويدهم بالطعام والشراب كلنا جبهة النصرة.
He's on a television channel taking in a call from one of these members of Jabhat al-Nusra, applauding what they're doing and everything, and he's just listening, and you can hear it.
لسان حال آلاف المسجونين في زنزانات البعث في دمشق وحلب واللاذقية التي يقطنها الآن النصيريين الباطنيين الملاعين. لسان حال هؤلاء المسجونين في زنزانات البعث كلنا جبهة النصرة. ولسان حال آلاف اللاجئين الذين يعيشون في المخيمات ويتعرضون لقتل أحيانا في مخيمات الزعتري ولبرد شديد في مخيمات تركيا وفي كافة المخيمات يقولون شبهة النصرة تمثلنا. لسان حال
يعني مثلا هل فجروا شيئا في الغرب؟ هل قتلوا رهائن غربيين؟ هل عملوا شيء يعني للغرب؟ لا. من الأشياء طبعا التي تزيدنا فرحا تلك الهمم العالية لهذه الكتائب المسلمة التي تستولي على المزيد من الأشياء التي في يد العدو تأخذها، تتقدم داخل العاصمة.
نعم أبو عدي.
You can see يعني the way he's supporting these groups.
طبعا مدينة الرقة مدينة محررة ولله الحمد، وأنتم يعني وسؤالي هل تنعمون بوحدة واحدة تحت راية واحدة أم هناك وجود نوع من الفرقة وعدم الاستقرار يعني ووجود رايات متفرقة لن تستطيعوا أن تتوحدوا من خلالها؟
نعم سيدي، في البداية خرجنا نحن في مدينة الرقة نهتف هي لله والله أكبر، وثورتنا كانت لله، وكان الصوت الأول من داخل المساجد هو الله أكبر. بصراحة في مدينة الرقة هناك العديد من الرايات داخل مدينة الرقة كرايات، وذلك بسبب عدد الألوية والكتائب والتجمعات.
So they're contacting someone there, and he's describing the situation from those fighters. This is it from what we see. And we've seen a lot of harm, but those groups end up killing each other, a lot of them.
داخل مدينة الرقة، والذي كان لها دور كبير في تحرير الحركة المدنية بكل
يعني يمكن يغني عن كتيبة كاملة. يعني ما هو ليست ترى ما هي فقط قضية فقط شيء مادي فقط،
هناك من الأشياء المعنوية.
هذه أشياء هي ترفع المعنويات وتحرج، ولذلك سبحان الله العظيم الأمة فيها خير كثير يا أخي، الأمة فيها خير كثير، لكن يظهر الآن هذه أحداث لولا الله يعني الذي قدر هذه الأحداث ما ظهرت
مثل هذه النماذج.
أنا سمعت خبر كذا.
And he promotes this Egyptian guy caused a riot from Egypt to go to Syria. And if you look at this person who is promoting, you can see that this is birds of a feather flock together in terms of how they talk. He says, Ayman Zawahiri, from Al-Qaeda. He said, may Allah protect Ayman Zawahiri. May Allah. SubhanAllah, how could you praise people like this and what they're doing of riots and these type of individuals? You don't support them. And this is the sermon he's talking about. This is someone praising Ayman Zawahiri and encouraging for Syria, generally speaking, this type of person.
وكلمتي ذات شقين، الشق الأول يتعلق بقضية فصل الحذاء، والثاني بإعانة المجاهدين. وأما إعانة هؤلاء المجاهدين، والآن جاءت الأخبار بأنهم قد شكلوا مجلسا واحدا، نسأل الله أن يتم عليهم النعمة وأن يرزقهم إكمال هذا الطريق ويدفعون من دمائهم دفاعا عنا وعن أمتهم. وحديث من جاهد غازيا في سبيل الله فقد غزا، العلماء قالوا مثله في الأجر وإن لم يصل حقيقة.
Supposedly the Mujahideen is given advice in those different places and lands causing revolution, and also in Syria. And we've seen the harm in a lot of these lands.
ولذلك نحرص الناس أن يقرأوا الكتب الحديثة التي يكتب بها المسلم، الكاتب المسلم من روح الاستعلاء، كما هي كتابات سيد قطب رحمه الله مثلا. هناك كتاب يتأثرون بالانهزامية الموجودة الآن.
And here he's advising, if you want to read the new books, Sayyid Qutb and the likes of that. He says people now have been defeated. And he also have other works encouraging of some of the works of Ikhwan Muslimin. And you can see that's on Islam Q&A. Some figures he just quotes on. People that are, some of them look like they're promoting certain movements now, of socialist movements.
تحس وأنت تقرأ تحس بالانهزام. وما تأليف سيد قطب رحمه الله وكتابته لأجزاء من ظلال القرآن في ذلك المكان إلا شاهد عيان على هذا الكلام. ولما سجن من الدعاة المعاصرين سيد قطب رحمه الله وغيره من العاملين وعبروا عن هذه المحن التي نزلت بهم، وقال سيد رحمه الله قصيدته العصماء: أخي أنت حر وراء السدود.
He's been talking about the imprisonment of Sayyid Qutb, all of it is praise. There's a lot can be said about the whole reasons by that, but at the end of the affair is someone who was connected to that group. Salman Al-Awdah, Safar Hawali, even initially influenced by Muhammad Surur. And so this person adopted that takfiri, that Sayyid Qutb type of methodology. He was with these people in support and whatever he can of trying to cause these revolutions. So on these premises, he was arrested, and for the safety of Saudi Arabia. And if a country does this just to protect the stability of its country, and you cannot attack it. And this is something that a government has a right to do. And just to make it short, the other individuals, because the audio is really long. Khalid Rashid, people say he was arrested because he defended the Prophet ﷺ from the cartoonist who insulted the Prophet ﷺ. No. If you really look at the actual document, the legal document from the Saudi government, they mention him and a number of individuals. They were caught fundraising for, supposedly for the orphans and stuff, and they ended up sending that money to someone, I even mentioned his name, that later on became from the biggest supporters of Al-Qaeda in Iraq and doing different things. So this is what some of the charges was. And also different incitement. And they mentioned that Sheikh Muhammad Salih Al-Uthaymeen tried to even speak to him of his Khawarij tendency and advise him. He didn't accept. He refused the advice of Sheikh Muhammad Salih Al-Uthaymeen. And also, what we know is that what took place of that rioting that he caused was about to lead to chaos in Saudi. And you don't do it like that. Generally, we know that that type of rioting is illegal in Saudi. Secondly, to cause commotion. It's not, and there's ways of responding to cartoonists and that, but defend the honor of the Prophet ﷺ. But causing more harm, or it's gonna use that as an issue that they allowed this embassy to be here, so as a result, we're gonna cause commotion in the streets in front of it. This is what some of the charges were laid against him. As for AbdulAziz At-Turayfi, it's about the same thing, because he was really close to that group, Salman Al-Awdah and them. But he was also involved with his tweets, like what took place in Egypt. He said, من وقف في ميادين مصر اليوم مطالب الإسلام ورفع الظلم والطغيان الذي نزل بالانقلاب فيرجى له الرباط ولو قتل ترجى له الشهادة. Promoting it, this whole revolution, and what we've seen that more harm happen. Also, and he says that on this clip, you can go back to Ikhwan Da'wah, Ikhwan Muslimin are merely a political group. They do not have any principles or aren't aqidah oriented. He said also mentioned you could find someone to be Salafi who's also an Ikhwani and gives a wrong impression regarding the history of Ikhwan Muslimin. And these are things that are used against him. AbdulAziz At-Turayfi also says, and from the other, despite what was mentioned of critique on certain things about Aqid. And then also, AbdulAziz At-Turayfi says in this audio clip, we shared it here on Ikhwan Da'wah, that Sisi isn't a ruler who obtained rulership by force. He says rather he's merely an oppressor where he misleads the people through his speech, and Turayfi does this, to think that he isn't like a ruler and that his rulership isn't established for him. Also from the things, he confuses the people concerning how dangerous the methodology of Osama bin Laden was by resembling it to a mistake that occurred by a Sahabi. We share the screenshot. AbdulAziz At-Turayfi also is a close friend to Salman Al-Awdah. He would visit him with Muhammad Arifi to his house. Salman Al-Awdah himself even stated on this on his website. Even when At-Turayfi got arrested, Salman Al-Awdah contacted him and said, how's things? And he told him how he is. They were connected. They were following each other. These are the same group. AbdulAziz At-Turayfi, we know what's been said from some of his tweets about Syria and the likes of that. And also how he's speaking directly about the rulers, especially Saudi. And here we share a clip of that as well, here on Fajr Dawah. Also, the scholars have spoken about him and even like errors and other topics. But here I'll give you one of the things that kind of incited the arrest even more, is when he tweeted, يظن بعض الحكام أن تنازله عن بعض دينه إرضاء للكفار سيوقف ضغوطهم وكلما نزل درجة دفعوه أخرى الثبات واحد والضغط واحد فغايتهم حتى تتبع ملتهم. And he's saying about indirectly towards the Saudi government. Some of the rulers think that them resigning from some things of their deen to please the kuffar is going to reduce the pressure. Every time they reduce the pressure, they're going to push more. So it's one for one. He said that it's going to lead to until you follow them in the religion. So these are some of the, when they've seen that how much followers they have and the way they are, and they're all connected as a group, these people could be a threat to society, especially the way they talk. They don't talk like how other scholars are, knowing that their words can incite to huge violence. So another individual that I want to speak about is the Imam leader that led in the Haram, Salih Al-Talib. He was arrested as well after a trip that he went to. When he came back, he was arrested. And they were following, they were observing certain things he was doing on where he was going and so forth. It wasn't merely because, as the people said, that he was arrested just because he spoke about some evil that is prevalent in the entertainment side and these celebrations and like what these concerts have, or supporting Palestine. It wasn't that. It was more for different issues as well. It was for other matters. And we'll give you even another example where he was even addressing the ruler.
داخليا عالة وعبء على مجتمعه وكأنه.
And he's talking about the leadership. And he's saying the one who's defeated internally is going to be a burden to his society. And publicly on the haram, this is, and he went on, he had these fiery khutbahs, and he was just speaking about things. The approach wasn't the best. And then later on, as they followed him where he was going and the people he was connected with, they found out he's from that group. So they arrested him. For the safety of Saudi Arabia. Also, next person we want to speak about is Salman Al-Awdah. Stop here because there's too much people to speak about and the charges and the different things that the people who they're connected with. But him is well-known takfiri. One time he was arrested, then he was released. He was given another chance. And when he was released, and a lot of these people, Muhammad Arifi and all these people were applauding, they were so happy. Khalid Muslih. And we mentioned the second time he was arrested. So he was arrested in 2004 upon a number of charges. Money laundering, he also was sending money to Tanzim al-Qaeda in Iraq, and he was doing a few things that he was banned to do. He was even supposed to not go to certain people that were on house arrest, and he would go. And it's known, the people that he was connected to, and all these individuals. Later on, Nasir Fahad was connected to the Saudi Riyadh bombings and different things. So a lot of these people, if you really look, the government is worried, especially after there's bomb threats like in Ramadan. One time there was iftar in Medina, and someone comes and tries to blow up people in Medina after the hatred for Saudi government. So these are arrests based upon preserving the stability of the country and for the better, because he's found these people, they're very active online and who they connect with, especially Salman Al-Awdah, Salih Al-Munajjid. These people, especially Salman Al-Awdah, Muhammad Salih Al-Munajjid, they were very active, and who they were contacting with this person and that person and Daesh or that person, and supporting this group. And one time in this country, you hear Muhammad Salih Al-Munajjid is in meeting with this Ikhwani guy in India and this group. And so these things were scary for the Saudi government. For this reason, they arrested these individuals and did a lockdown on a lot of them. So this is what's happening inshallah, what's been mentioned. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit what we heard and to make us fair. Even with people that وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ. And to be fair, even with people that we perhaps have some animosity towards. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَنْ لَا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Because you have hatred for Saudi, it doesn't mean that you can just say everything that they said of charges about a particular person, all of it is lies.